Let's dive into one of the most famous personal finance books of all time, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Now, the author, Robert Kiyosaki, had a really unique upbringing. He had two fathers, and their financial lives were polar opposites. And you know what? Those differences taught him everything he needed to know about money.
So get this. On one side, you have his actual father, his poor dad. This guy was a genius, had a PhD, a stable government job, but he struggled with money his whole life and ended up leaving behind a pile of debt. Then, on the other side, you have his best friend's dad, his rich dad. This man dropped out after the 8th grade, but went on to become one of the wealthiest men in Hawaii, leaving behind an empire. How on earth does that happen?
So what gives? How can the guy with all the education be the poor one? Well, the secret wasn't about how much they earned. Kiyosaki figured out pretty quickly that his poor dad wasn't poor because of his paycheck. The real difference, the very first lesson, was all in their heads. It came down to their mindset, their thoughts about money, and how they acted on those thoughts.
And this is where it gets really interesting. Their core beliefs about money couldn't have been more different. Poor Dad always said things like, the love of money is the root of all evil. But Rich Dad? He flipped that idea completely on its head. He taught that the lack of money is the root of all evil. Just think about that for a second. That one difference in belief shaped every single financial choice they ever made.
This pattern continued in just their everyday words. When they saw something they wanted but couldn't afford, Poor Dad's default response was, I can't buy it. And that's a statement, right? It just shuts your brain down. End of story. But Rich Dad, he would ask a question. How can I buy it? A question like that, it forces your brain to switch on, to start looking for answers, to get creative.
And you see this difference again when it comes to risk. Poor Dad's advice was always, play it safe, don't take any risks. For him, job security was everything. But Rich Dad had a totally different take. He said, learn to manage risk. See, he knew that if you avoid risk, you also avoid opportunity. True security wasn't about having a safe job. It was about knowing how to handle risk instead of running from it.
Okay, and here's the big one. This one's pretty controversial. Poor Dad, just like most of us are taught, believed our home is our biggest asset. Makes sense, right? But Rich Dad would say, no, my home is my responsibility. He argued it's actually a liability because it's constantly taking money out of your pocket for the mortgage, taxes, repairs, without ever putting money back in. And this single idea is the setup for the most important lesson in the whole book. And that brings us right here to the most critical rule in finance, according to Rich Dad. He said, if you can just understand this one simple concept, the difference between an asset and a liability, you're on your way to building wealth. This is it. This is the only rule you really need.
It all kicks off with this idea. Rich people don't work for money. They have their money work for them. Most people are stuck in what Kiyosaki calls the rat race. You know the drill. You go to work to get a paycheck, you use that paycheck to pay your bills and buy stuff, and you're trapped. You're on a hamster wheel, working harder and harder, but never actually getting ahead.
So what's the escape? It's this incredibly simple definition. An asset is anything that puts money in your pocket, and a liability is anything that takes money out of your pocket. That's it. That's the whole game. If you want to be rich, you spend your life buying assets. If you end up poor or middle class, it's because you spent your life buying liabilities you thought were assets.
Okay, to really see how powerful this is, let's look at a quick story. Imagine two friends, Suresh and Ramesh. They both work hard, they each save up 10 lakh rupees, and now they're about to make their first big financial decision, a decision that will literally define the rest of their lives.
Suresh takes his 10 lakh and buys a brand new car, a classic liability. The second he drives it off the lot, it starts losing value. Ramesh, on the other hand, takes his 10 lakh and buys a small plot of land, an asset. Okay, let's fast forward 5 years. Suresh's car? It's worth maybe half of what he paid. Ramesh's land? It's doubled in value to 20 lakh. Now let's jump ahead 15 years. Suresh's car is basically worthless, but Ramesh, who is smart with his investment, has seen his net worth grow to 1 crore. One decision, two totally different outcomes.
And this quote just nails it. It really is that simple. The wealthy are laser-focused on building up their asset column. Everybody else, they're busy accumulating liabilities. So, if the whole point is to buy assets, how do you actually do it? Well, that leads us straight to the next big lesson. Mind your own business. Now, this does not mean you have to go quit your job and start a company. It's about a shift in your focus, from your boss's business to your own business.
Rich Dad's advice is simple. Keep your day job. Be a fantastic employee.
But, and this is the important part, don't just spend your paycheck. You have to use your income to systematically buy real assets. Use your job to fund the acquisition of things that will actually grow in value and make you more money.
So what kind of real assets are we talking about here? Well, things like businesses that you own but don't have to physically run, or stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. Real estate that actually pays you rent every month. Basically anything valuable that's designed to generate income and put more money in your pocket even when you're not working.
And this brings us to a huge difference in behavior. When poor and middle-class people get some extra cash, like a bonus, what's the first thing they do? They go buy a luxury, a new phone, a bigger TV, a fancy vacation. The rich do the exact opposite. They use that extra money to buy another income-producing asset. Then, once their assets are generating enough cash flow, they use that money to buy the luxuries. It's a total game changer. They buy luxuries last, not first.
Okay, so once you've really mastered those fundamentals, Rich Dad had a few more advanced lessons to, really speed up that journey to financial freedom.
First, get smart about taxes. The rich understand the tax code and use things like corporations to legally pay a lot less in taxes than employees do. Second, you have to learn how to invent money. This is just a cool way of saying you develop the financial IQ to spot amazing investment opportunities that everyone else is missing. And finally, and this is so important, you have to work to learn, not just to earn. Especially when you're young, pick jobs based on the skills you'll acquire, skills like sales, marketing, leadership, not just on the paycheck. Those skills will become your most valuable assets for sure.
So that's pretty much the core of the Rich Dad philosophy. It all boils down to one simple, repeated action: acquiring assets. So I'll leave you with this question to think about. Looking at your own life, right now, what is one asset, just one thing, that will put money in your pocket that you can acquire this month?